Movie fans, young and old, know all about the final girl trope in horror movies, where the female lead is the last one standing and has to face off against the serial killer, zombie, alien, or whatever gross monster is on the loose in order to save herself. It's a cliche that has been firmly in place since John Carpenter's Halloween, and it holds true that there's almost always a woman left standing to drive the final stab home. Hello, prospective movie directors, I'm right here. Now, these ladies probably go on to live happy and productive lives, in between intense therapy sessions and counselling of course, and if they're really lucky then they won't be called back for the sequel. If they are unfortunate enough to get nabbed into a film deal though, then they're almost always due to be killed off the second time around. Occasionally, this can be a shocking, emotional twist if it's handled correctly. But if it's not, fans will likely be complaining about it on message boards for the rest of time. As is only right. I am the power-loading Ash from What Culture, and these are 8 final girls who immediately die in the sequel. 8. Alice. Friday the 13th, Part 2. Alice was one of the characters who came to define the final girl trope, being the original survivor of Friday the 13th. After her friends were murdered, she had to face the downright batty Pamela Voorhees alone, and was able to win the fight thanks to finding Pamela's one weakness, which, as it turns out, was a machete to the neck. The second movie opens with Alice in her apartment, still having nightmares and struggling to move on. Unfortunately for her, it turns out Jason didn't drown all those years ago. He survived and grew up to become a murderous hermit, and he didn't take too kindly to the whole mother decapitation thing. He tracks her down, and after setting her up for a scare by leaving his mother's head in the fridge, the rascal, he drove a screwdriver into her temple. Alice was never the most compelling character anyway, but it is a grim ending after all she went through in the first movie. 7. Sue. The Rage, Carrie 2. If the movie Carrie had a lesson worth learning, it is this. Do not bully the emotionally abused psychic teenager in your school because bad things will happen. The teens in the original found this out the hard way when Carrie turns her prom into a psychic murder festival. The sole survivor is Sue, who feels guilty about teasing Carrie and befriends her. She even tries to prevent the prank that causes the fatal psychic outburst, but her teacher kicks her out and she has to listen to all the death and chaos from the outside. Turns out that night had a fairly traumatizing effect on her, and in the sequel, set 20 years later, she's become a school counselor to help other troubled kids. She comes across another girl with psychic powers being bullied who turns out to be Carrie's half-sister. Guess what happens next? Sue turns to intervene in the new massacre in the third act, only to receive a poker to the face for her efforts. Kids today, eh? 6. Rachel Carruthers. Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. The Halloween franchise is famous for killing off its final girls, with the death of Laurie Strode a blow that still hurts our hearts to this day. And yes, it has been retconned, but it's still shit all the same. And whilst the disrespect of Laurie getting lobbed off a building is definitely the most upsetting death of the bunch, both her daughter Jamie and Jamie's babysitter Rachel were unfortunate enough to suffer the same fate throughout the film saga. To be fair, Jamie at least squeezed 2 films out before meeting her end. But poor Rachel had just Halloween 4 to shine before she got a pair of scissors to the chest in the 5th installment. An act that even the film's executive producer has noted is a big regret of his. All Rachel tried to do was protect Jamie, facing off against Michael Myers multiple times to stop her from falling victim to his murderous ways. And all she got was disrespect. Pour one out for Rachel, my guys. 5. LILA, Psycho 2. The original slasher movie made a name for itself by killing the nominal lead halfway through, while she was trying to have a relaxing shower, no less. Her sister Lila investigated her disappearance and found the nice, awkward owner of the motel was really a murderer who believed he was his own mother, and in the end, she brought him to justice. The sequel opens up 22 years later, with Norman set free and Lila none too happy about it. She hasn't forgiven Norman for his deeds, and in an effort to drive him crazy again, she convinces her daughter to pose as his friend and play pranks that will drive him over the edge. Sounds like nothing could possibly go wrong there. They do a pretty good job of messing with Norman, except there really is a killer on the loose, and when Lila sneaks into the house to set up another trick, she receives a butcher knife down the throat for it. This is what happens when you don't practice forgiveness. Namaste, everyone. 4. Elizabeth Shaw, Alien Covenant. It takes a lot of balls to set up a character as the next Ripley in your series and to then avoid her existing at all for the large part of the sequel. In Prometheus, Elizabeth Shaw is the badass protagonist that manages to perform her own abortion of an alien creature before destroying a spaceship intent on killing all life on Earth. So only a few small things really. But acts as the sole survivor of a chain of terrible events that sees her set off to find the engineer homeworld for the secrets to human life. In Alien Covenant, the tag team duo of Shaw and the android David are split up, with only David making a real appearance as the sole inhabitant of a strange new planet. It's late in the movie when we realise that Shaw has been murdered by Big Dave and his weird science experiments, appearing for only a short moment as a mashed up body rather than having anything substantial to add to her story. It's a shame we never get to really see her planetary adventures with the Bionic Man. But alas, she's dead, innit? 3. Clear. Final Destination 2. Death is a persistent bugger if the Final Destination movies are anything to go by. He doesn't take kindly to pesky kids messing up his design, and when the survivors of the plane explosion in the original try to change their fates, he comes after them with a vengeance. By the time of the second movie, Clear is the only survivor left, and has locked herself into a mental asylum to stay safe. She comes out of hiding to help the next group try to outrun their fates, and since she is technically the lead character, she should be safe from harm, right? Wrong. Oh, so wrong. She later walks headfirst into an explosion, which melts her face off before tossing her down a corridor. This was probably the franchise's way of reminding viewers they really shouldn't get too attached to anyone, and none of the characters in the series have successfully cheated death to date. 2. Karen, The Grudge 2. The Grudge was part of the J-horror remake wave that briefly swept through Hollywood, which started with the American version of The Ring and stopped somewhere around the time of One Missed Call, thankfully. The remake of The Grudge held some surprisingly effective chills though, even if the acting and plot left plenty to be desired by some. The film was such a hit it seemed like Sarah Michelle Gellar would break out of her Buffy typecasting, but sadly, that was not to be. Her character Karen just about survived the original, but she obviously didn't feel like another round of being chased through a tiny house by a ghost with a severe sore throat, so she opted for a cameo. So in The Grudge 2, Karen's sister comes to visit her in the hospital following the end of the first movie, where she is still being haunted. The ghost soon chases her through the hospital and out onto the roof, where she is quickly pushed off the edge. It shouldn't really be a shock for fans of the series since all the characters end up dead, but killing the biggest star at least showed nobody was safe. 1. KRISTEN, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Patricia Arquette made her film debut in Dream Warriors, the third film in the Nightmare on Elm Street series, and she quickly became a fan favourite thanks to a mix of strength and vulnerability. When the original final girl Nancy met the business end of Freddy's razors in the finale of the film, it was assumed KRISTEN would be a replacement. But even she could not escape his wrath. KRISTEN is played by a different, much less talented actress in the next movie, where she's paranoid Freddy is coming back for her and her friends. Turns out she is completely right, as there wouldn't really be a movie otherwise. After Freddy taunts her for a bit, he throws her into a furnace and she is burnt to a crisp. She also passes her dream powers onto her best friend because the plot had to keep going somehow. Her death kind of feels like a cheap shock value on the part of the filmmakers, and it lacks the emotional punch it would have had if Arquette was still playing the role. And that's our list. What other final girls met an undeserved end in a sequel? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. I've been Ash, and this has been What Culture. Make sure to subscribe to the What Culture YouTube channel for more lists like this, and don't forget to visit whatculture.com for daily news and articles. Thanks for watching.